I'm going to do a little shop update here. There's going to be a number of things covered. One of the things that I want to show you is that I got a new tool in, and if you watch the haul truck build, you'll see me using it. But what it is they're actually extensions, and you undo the socket just like a air thing. So you pull this back, it unlocks the socket. What they are is actually extensions with screwdriver handles on them, and they're great because a lot of times you'll put a ratchet on something with an extension and it'll get to a point where the ratchet won't ratchet anymore. It becomes too loose, but then you go to try and turn the extension, and because usually they're chrome plated, sometimes the nut or bolt will bind up and your hand just slips on the chrome plating. So what this thing does is allows you to grab a hold of this and spin it off with a screwdriver type handle. And I have they come in a set of 3 from Mac Tools, and they also have that little knurling on the bottom of it so that you can use that too. But I got to tell you, I've been using that one logically, as you can see, with no dirty handles. That the other 2 haven't been used, but I really like them. I not only like the idea of it, because it's annoying to me sometimes you get a bolt loose and it just takes forever to get it out, and this way you can rapidly turn it with a thing. But I also like the way that this thing locks on there with that. Yeah, I probably won't be able to do it with one hand, but to get it off you have to release it like that. I really like them. So on to some other things on the shop update. It's a Wednesday morning. I'm headed down to Pittsburgh to pick up some steel for metal supermarkets. Gotta go down to Carnegie, actually, so it's south of Pittsburgh, Carnegie, Pennsylvania. Pick up some steel and take it back to Buffalo. So it's about 7 o'clock in the morning, somewhere around there. Headed west on the New York State Thruway. Shoot over to Erie, Pennsylvania, and then take 79 south down towards Pittsburgh. What I'll do is I got that new window mount for the GoPro, so on the way back I'll stick the GoPro in the window and film it. I'm not going to show the entire thing, but what I'll do is just edit out sections of it so that you can see some of that road down through Pittsburgh. Well, down to Pittsburgh. Actually, it's going to be coming back from Pittsburgh. From Pittsburgh north towards Erie. So I'll show you that. If the camera battery lasts, it'll probably take the entire trip from Pittsburgh or Carnegie all the way back into Buffalo. So I'll show you that. Okay, down in Pittsburgh, or Carnegie actually. This is a load of stuff that I had to pick up. Not a lot. I mean, as far as weight goes. But anyways, that's it. I'm gonna try and set that GoPro up in the window. See how successful I am. I told you that I would put the camera up in the window. Well, a nut fell off of the mount that goes in the window, and I can't get the camera to stay up in the window. So this is 7
79, probably about 25 miles south of Erie, Pennsylvania. Just traveling back, gotta drop this stuff off in Buffalo. But kind of a fiasco picking the steel up. There's one building, and the address got me to that building. Well, there's this huge lot, and you pull in and there was a bunch of trucks in there, so I went in there, and only to find out after about half an hour of waiting around that there was actually 3 companies inside of the building. Each company had like a bay. Actually 4 companies, but let's say 3 steel companies. 3 steel companies had each had a bay. So when I first went there, the guy asked me, he says, "You there for a pickup?" And I says, "Yeah." And he says, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Who are you picking up for?" And I says, "Metal Warehouses." And he says, "Okay, let me find the order." So he's looking for the order. He says, "Call up and find out, get a order number or a pickup number. It should be a 5-digit number starting with 9. So I called Metal Warehouse, and they says, "Well, we never got a number." And he says, "You got to go in the office." And so I told the guy, says, "They're telling me I've got to go in the office and pick up a slip." And he says, "Wait a minute, who are you here for?" And I says, "Crestfield Steel." And he says, "Oh, we're not Crestfield Steel. We used to be all one company, but now it's split up into 3 different companies." So it was a fiasco. I kind of lost probably half an hour, 45 minutes standing around waiting for this guy to try and find my order, only to find out I was in the wrong bay of this huge warehouse. So I'll bring you back. We're going north of a place called Westfield or Mayville. This is Route 90, and over on the right hand side or in front of you, as the camera's facing, you'll see grapevines. This whole area along here in western New York is loaded with grapevines, and they're a specific variety, Concord grapes, or more commonly known as Welch's grape juice. Actually, the town that Westfield that we just went past, there's a office building for Welch's, an old office building for Welch's in there, and it's for sale. It's a stone building, kind of branded with Welch's. Be a cool place to buy and make into condominiums or apartments. It's right at the crossroads of the intersection of that little town. But anyways, just a little trivial fact. You'll find those grapevines all the way from here to just before you get back to my hometown of Hamburg, New York. You'll find them all along through here. Now they're getting interdispersed with little boutique wineries that are springing up and producing other varieties of grapes. But most of the old stock grapevines were Concord grapes or Welch's grape juice.
This is a cable trailer. It's one of them little trailers that are used to haul behind a truck to, they put reels of cable on it. In this case, what they got on it is guy wire. But the guy brought it in to me. There's a cable company. Now, when I say a cable company, it's not really a cable company. It's a contractor that works for a cable company, installing, in this case, they install fiber optics. What he did is he brought this trailer into me because right down here between the axle, let's call it the axle housing, and the spring shackle, it was cracked. It was cracked pretty bad. So what I did is welded it. But when he brought it into me, there was also another problem. He said that the axle kept shifting on that spring, so he wanted me to weld between that spring shackle and the spring to hold it in place. So what we did is took a sledgehammer and centered it up because it wasn't tracking, the trailer wasn't tracking correctly behind the truck, because that shackle had moved back on the spring and it cocked the axle in relationship to the trailer. So he just brought it in here, he left it, he had to go, said he drove 700 miles to get here. So he was going to go to the motel and get some sleep and then come back around 3 o'clock and pick it up. So I did what he asked me to. I welded it like he did, or like he told me he wanted it done. I welded that crack up. It was hard to get in there. I got a die grinder in there and cleaned it up as best I could before I welded it. In here, not that I really wanted to do that to begin with. I don't really think it's a great idea to weld the shackle between the spring and the shackle, but what the actual issue was, these bolts were loose. The bolts were loose, so it was just sliding back and forth on the thing. If he had tightened the bolts up, I wouldn't have had to weld it. Now, I put a wrench on the one and I got it to tighten up a little bit. But the other ones, I can't move them. And I'm not going to screw with it. He didn't want me to do it. He wanted me to weld it, so I'm not going to screw it. I could probably put some heat, put some heat on those nuts and got them to tighten down without breaking the bolt. But I was afraid. I pulled on it pretty hard with like a 18-inch wrench, and it didn't want to move. The nut didn't want to move, so I just let it go. I tightened that one, the one that I could get to turn, and let the other ones go. But anyways, that's that. Just a little shop update of a project that we had going on. Here, I'll show you on the other side. What happened is, where you see where it's welded there, the original weld, that cracked between the axle housing and that shackle housing. In part of my shop update, I did that film that me having to go to Carnegie and pick up that steel. And I told you I was going to put the GoPro into the window. Well, this is a window mount adapter for the GoPro. And the reason why I couldn't get it, and this is kind of indicative of all of them, do you see that knob there? And it's got a nut inserted into it, and hopefully that focuses, or there's enough light there to see it. Well, what happened is, on this one, the nut came out of it, so I couldn't tighten it. So what I did is, I've got a bunch of jars. I went to an estate sale one time, and an old machinist, and got a bunch of jars like this, just filled with assortments of nuts and bolts and all sorts of stuff. Well, what I found a nut. Actually, there's two nuts. They both fit onto it. But it only screws on about 3 threads. Not sure if I can hold the camera and do this at the same time. But take my word for it, it only threads on about 3 threads. Probably not in focus, but let me get it on there. Yeah, see, it stops there, but kind of that's as far as it would probably go normally. But when I was doing this, I was thinking, you know, I bet you that stupid thing is metric, and but I don't think it is, because this was a very old machinist. I went to that estate sale about 2 years ago, and he was 104 when he died. So, yeah, I doubt if there's anything metric in there. That was where that was going. But anyways, so what I'm going to do is, this one is a larger, the bolt pattern, or the outside, the wrench size of the nut is bigger than that other one. Both the same thread size, but I'm going to have to press that in, and maybe I'll glue it, because that becomes a issue with these things where those nuts pop out of it. Quality Chinese made shit. But what I'll do is I'll pop that in there, and it's kind of got like a splined effect on it, so that you pivot it to different spots, so it'll stay once it gets in there. Even though those threads only go on the 2 or 3 turns, I can probably get it to work and be able to hold that splined effect in place, even if it's not really, really tight. But anyways, that's kind of why it did it. I actually made a video on, I bought a solenoid valve on eBay. And as you probably know, most of the shit on eBay is Chinese made stuff. So the first solenoid valve, I'm thinking, oh, well, I'll pay a little more money for it because it's probably better quality. So the first one I bought was more expensive than the second one, and you know what happened is they did not taper the pipe threads on the thing. It was a 1/2-inch pipe thread, or 1/2-inch threaded adapter for the solenoid valve, and when I put it on, the nipples bottomed right out on the thing, and I'm thinking, well, that's stupid, but there's no pressure on it, it's just gravity feed. It was for my auxiliary fuel tank, it's just gravity feed, and I can probably get it to hold. But what happened is over time it was leaking a little bit. It was hard to see, but given over time you could see it in the bottom of the bed. So I ordered another one, pulled it apart and figured out what was wrong. Kind of knew what was wrong from the beginning when I put it together, but over time it started leaking. So I ordered a new one, a less expensive one, and it didn't have the issue with the non-tapered pipe threads. But you can never tell the stuff that you buy, Chinese stuff. Some of it could be good or workable, others just shit. So as you can see, I have another one of these cable trailers in here. The first one I did for that guy, I fixed that axle on the thing where it had pivoted. Now, I've got to tell you, most cable trailers that the first cable trailer, he wants me to give him a price for building one of these things. Now, and he showed me pictures of it. He sent me pictures of it, the trailers that he's been looking at, and he told me how much they wanted for them, and I kind of find it hard to believe. Now, I'm not going to say that it's not true, but to begin with, the ones that he showed me didn't have suspension. There was no spring on it. There was actually no axle. What they had done is welded the axle ends to the side of the frame of the trailer, so there was no suspension on it whatsoever, just the tire, whatever the tire absorbs. So he showed me pictures of it, something that he's looking for, and he's telling me that these trailers cost between $2,000 and $6,000. Now, what I'll explain to you in a second why this trailer is in here, but it's kind of hard to believe. My first thing is, if you saw the trailer, if you go back and look at that trailer that was in here before, there was no lights and it wasn't registered. This one has got a plate on it. This is registered. So I'm not understanding. Most of the trailers that I see, these cable trailers, do not have plates on them. I mean, you get these cable trailers, huge cable trailers for the large utility companies, and those are registered. But these smaller trailers that these transient cable installers kind of use, most of them are not registered. So one of the factors that I have to consider whether I'm going to give this guy a price for building a trailer is to figure out whether this trailer has to be registered or not. And so I'm not really sure. Where is the cutoff point? At what point in making a trailer do you have to have it registered and not have to have it registered? I know that like tow-behind air compressors that you can pick up from a rental place aren't registered, and you just throw them on the back of your truck and take them somewhere. And I also think a lot of guys pull like wood splitters and stuff like that, or things like that behind trucks, and they're not registered. So I'm not really sure at what defining point the trailer has to be registered or not registered, but that's kind of a moot point. These trailers are the ones that I've seen are probably the worst pieces of junk that I've ever seen in my life. And they're pieces of junk because of what they're made out of. This tubing, and it's rectangular tube steel, is extremely thin. And that's what happened. I'll show you what happened, why he brought it in. And I didn't see it at first. You see that Johnson bar that was laying there? Well, that Johnson bar it crossed here, and it was stuck into here, and it was tied up with that string and tape and those tie wires. And at first I just thought he had that Johnson bar stuck in there because he uses it maybe to position the cables and stuff, or the cable reels, to get them loaded. What I saw was cracks here and on the other side, and because it was wrapped up. Well, only to discover this hitch extension tube was split all the way up, and it was folded on top. The top hadn't split, but it was folded. So what he had done is stuck that Johnson bar in there to support it enough to get it back to my shop so that I could fix it. So what I've done is, these guys are out working, so what I welded this up. What I did is I took a piece of heavy gauge tube steel, and when I say it's heavy gauge, it's probably 3/16 tube steel, and split the bottom out of it. And because this is 2-inch wide, this is 2.5-inch tube steel, I could get it to slide down over there. What I did is I welded those sides up, ground them off so that I could slip this back over there and put it in there. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to fail. It'll fail because this is really light gauge. I had a hell of a time keeping welding it up to begin with because it would blow through, and welding this up, you know, I had to again concentrate all of the bead onto the thicker material and just try and get penetration into that thin stuff without blowing through. But what it's going to do is create a weak spot here. The things are extremely cheaply made. Just And when I say cheaply made, it's because of the gauge of tube steel that they're making them out of. So I'm going to tell you, if I do give the guy a price on making a trailer, and another guy came in, their shop foreman came in and says, well, if you make that trailer for that guy, you ought to make 2 of them, because I'll tell you, you could sell another one if it's a good quality trailer to somebody else. But if I did it, again, I would probably use the rectangular steel. If you go back and look at the first trailer, it was made out of square tubular steel. This is rectangular tubular steel, and I would probably use the rectangular tubular steel and make it out of 1/4-inch wall thickness for the frame. And the other one wasn't like this. It didn't have really the center extension. It had 2 large tubes that came out in a triangle, and the pintle hitch was hooked to it right about back here. Now, they're telling me that guys like the extension on it because it's more convenient to back it up and pull it with that extension on it. If you're doing that, you've got to make that thing out of heavy wall tubing, and you've got to put cross bracing out of heavy wall tubing in there too, to get it with gussets on it. There's a lot of load forces on a trailer driving it over the road, so that's one issue. But with this trailer, because you use the trailer to tilt what you do is flip the trailer up, and it brings this over, and you center the bar onto the reels, and then you pull down on the tongue to get it to sit back down upright, so the things are up and the trailer is horizontal to the ground. So there's a lot of forces that way too. So there's a lot of forces being put on these trailers, and the way they're built is, well, I mean, the way they're built, they work, but they build them out of some pretty poor selected materials. So just another part of the shop update.